So we have Germany continuing to sell Bitcoin. Interestingly, Justin Sun has offered to jump in and buy the entire bag off them off market. So this was reported, as well as I believe was said by Justin Sun directly on his own Twitter account here. So if you aren't following Justin Sun, which I don't, because I don't usually care what this guy says, but it's interesting that he wants to buy the entire bag off them, so as to minimize the impact on the market. But he's willing to pick up the entire the entire set of Bitcoin that the German government has.
Well, so remind me who Justin's son is. I mean,
Creator of Tron.
and did he make all of his money on Tron? Who was he before he created Tron? Wasn't Tron a giant rug? What happened there? How does he have enough money to buy all of Germany's Bitcoin? And what is he going to do? Pay him in Tron?
I think he's got cash. I think he's got money. I think he made I ostensibly made all of his money off of Tron. I think Tron is not dead or rugged yet. So yeah, I think this one still exists. I think everybody is surprised that it isn't rugged or that it hasn't died yet, but there it is, still rocking on.
And what do people use Tron for?
Dude, I have no idea. I don't care about Tron. Like I said, I don't follow Justin Sun. I don't know about Justin Sun as far as like being somebody that, other than if you remember back in the days, you've got the creator of Terra Luna, Do Kwon, Justin Sun, and CZ is sort of very prominent crypto guys that have, substantial amounts of wealth due to them having created some L1s that got a significant amount of traction. So I think, a lot of the wealth that he's got is derived from Tron. I don't think he's offering to pay Tron for these Bitcoin. I imagine he'd be paying USD. Now, I don't know if he has to liquidate other stuff, but like here's Justin Sun saying, I'm willing to take on a substantive Bitcoin position. So, this is a big vote with somebody who's got a lot of dollars. And even if he's not buying them off market, he's probably using this as an opportunity to pick up Bitcoins on the cheap. I think it's funny too, because like we'll see all-time highs where people look at, Bitcoin at 70,000 or higher and say, gosh, I wish I had purchased. And then they won't buy when there's a big dip like this. So it's always kind of a repeated story that this happens over and over again, and that you have a buying opportunity and then don't.
I wonder, did Germany have a Bitcoin purchasing, or is the Bitcoin that they're selling, was it confiscated from illegal users or from legal busts? I would imagine it was. That's how they came into holding Bitcoin, just like the United States government. Yeah,
I'd imagine. I don't know right off the top of my head how they got their Bitcoin, but I don't think they got it by buying it.
Well, and I think that's important to note with regards to like the what sort of narrative they're going to be looking for when they're selling Bitcoin, because they don't need to. They're one, making tons of dollars or euros or whatever they're selling it in, or for, and why do they care about the price of Bitcoin? Like obviously, if they're selling it and not holding it as a reserve asset, that's because they have other things. And Germany, I would say, what is Germany's gold holding? And if they have actual gold backing the euro, I guess it's the euro's gold holding, but I don't know. I think Germany actually holds a decent amount of gold. That to me,
I mean, Germany is the principal participant in the EU. So their monetary policy is tied to whatever the EU's monetary policy is.
well, but Germany can hold its own gold.
Certainly, it can, buy and hold anything it wants to, for sure.
And I know France, Germany and France are both really the drivers of the euro common currency. and they have uh, I don't know, strong economies, but maybe that's in doubt. Oh, did you see the French election?
Well, hold on. Before we move off of that, I think there's some interesting stuff. Let's stick on BTC for just a few more minutes before we move to elections. So there's definitely dissent in Germany regarding this policy. So at least one member of their parliament, I believe, is saying this is not the right path. That Bitcoin ought to be a reserve asset. So this was stated by this Joanna Kotar. And then on another interesting note along this same line that I'd like to talk about a little bit is Trump saying that Bitcoin should be a strategic reserve asset as well. This concept of using Bitcoin as a reserve asset is being discussed, when the Federal Reserve is also coming under fire and under question about whether U.S. Treasuries can be continued to be viewed as the safe asset that they've been in the past, and if this might be the move. You know, Larry Fink of BlackRock has started to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet directly, not just as an ETF. So BlackRock is buying Bitcoin. The ETFs are buying Bitcoin. So I think, if you start seeing some major institutions, ETFs, U.S. presidential, you know, presumptive nominee Trump saying that he wants to do this, and certain dissent within the German parliament saying that they want to make Bitcoin a reserve asset, as well as several nation states saying that they're adopting Bitcoin. I don't know, Lucas. To me, this doesn't look like one-offs. This looks like a pretty substantive trend.
Well, I think it's important to bear in mind what the amount of holdings of gold are for a country, because if a country actually has a large amount of gold that they're holding, it'd be much better to base their currency off of the gold rather than going out and getting something new. And unless they are a small country that is concerned about their ability to secure that gold. And
Oh, you
Germany.
mean like somebody invades the country and steals their gold?
Absolutely, absolutely. And Germany's got lots of castles. I think they've got lots of places where they can keep their gold. It is not a like small country by land. I definitely think Germany can handle securing their gold. If the United States and especially Great Britain can secure gold, I think Germany can too. El Salvador may be a different story, especially given the amount of gang violence and violence that they've historically had there. Yes, I know Bukele's really tamped things down, but it's still somewhat of a volatile region. And so holding Bitcoin and something that you can secure in memory, like the memory of the president or a group of people, maybe that's better. But Germany is the second largest. There we go. Thank you. Second largest holder of gold behind the United States, and I think it's going to be. I think it's a political abuse of the knowledge of constituents to equate countries with large gold holdings with those that don't. And I
It's
think,
always interesting. Every time I look at some sort of a breakdown, whether it's be lithium deposits or the amount of gold, how is it the United States is always on top on every single thing? It's just landmass. Like, it just comes down to landmass ultimately, I think. It's just like, if you have all the land, then at some point you just have the most of everything.
well, and maybe even when it comes to like lithium deposits and other rare earth metals, we haven't been making a lot of extractions of. I mean, when it comes to uranium, we're not the top in uranium, but we go get our uranium
Yet, I
from
mean,
Venezuela.
it's just like all we have to do is sort of scratch in the dirt a little bit and be like, oh, I guess we do have a lot of uranium. Like,
Well,
it
we
seems like that's what happens every single time. It's just like, oh, do we need something? Oh, I guess Pennsylvania or Arizona or some other part of our country already has whatever thing that we're gonna need. And the only thing that we've really been doing is printing dollars, getting everybody to take them, and then extracting all the wealth and minerals from everywhere else and just importing it.
So yes, and I mean when it comes to Pennsylvania, we didn't have a lot of natural gas, and then we had a technological innovation in hydraulic fracking, and that opened up the ability to extract a lot of natural gas. And
Yeah, and we're the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, what I've heard, like the way
yep,
it's described.
yep, and looking for people to sell compressed natural gas to, like Germany, which is part of the conflict with Russia today.
Okay,
So
well, look, the reason I think that this is interesting that we're talking about this, so I hear what you're saying about, okay, if you are a large industrialized country that can secure gold, like you ought to be stacking some amount of gold. I don't know, from looking at that list, the countries which, have those large militaries, the ability to secure gold, they already have gold, so I guess it's a question of, should a country adopt Bitcoin, or should they hold it as a strategic reserve asset? Um, it's a scarce commodity right now. That's the long and the short of it. Like we've minted out all the Bitcoin that we're basically going to mint out, and so now there's this scramble to pick up the Bitcoin that some long-term holders are selling off. And I think that if you look at what's been happening in this last cycle, there are really old wallets that have started to move some of their coins, which fair enough. Like if people held from 10 cents up to 50, 60, 70,000 and take some money off the table, I'm not going to fault any of them for doing that, because they're ostensibly trading for goods and services that aren't directly traded in BTC. They want to buy land, cars, houses, whatever they want to buy. Like, this is a good time to do it. But as far as, like, institutional and corporate adoption, that is undoubtedly happening, and they're buying up those Bitcoins, and they're holding them as strategic and reserve assets, and this is happening as a treasury model. Like, it's undoubtedly occurring. And whether companies should be adopting gold as a holding, like, that's a different sort of a idea for how a company might hold its treasury. Like, certainly they might hold gold, but like what looks like is happening is Bitcoin is becoming a type of reserve asset.
certainly it is, and is useful in such a way. But uh, I mean, let's remember that the fight, that's one battle, and the larger fight is to put governments on blockchain to actually, not just add to the basket of things that they can claim value and stretch a currency over, but to actually put them on something that limits their ability to print or create money, and and also gives us the ability to track and see all of their financial transactions.
And Kennedy has talked about that, so I think that I think that one's he's probably the only person really talking about transparency in that way. This, without a doubt, though, is a shot across the bow from Trump, saying, "Hey, I am definitely courting the crypto vote. This is the kind of thing that I don't think we're going to hear Biden repeat this, because clearly their administration right now has been selling Bitcoin. So I think this is a major divergence, and it's going to be one that would be hard for Biden to copy in on this one. Biden certainly copied in on saying, "Hey, I'll take Bitcoin contributions and work with Coinbase and whatever." But as far as their policy, they're dumping Bitcoin, not using it as a strategic reserve. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this continually come up as a way that the Trump campaign courts the votes of the crypto community, and even if they do whatever they need to do to create that pact to go pick up those millions of dollars that have been tried to transfer to the Trump campaign. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him go lean heavily in this direction.
It's going to be really interesting what happens whenever some people just transfer money to a wallet address because they want to, because they know Trump's wallet address, and they just transfer it. Uh, what's the FEC going to do that now then? But maybe that's a different discussion. going to when I saw Trump announce a strategic reserve asset, I thought the next step is going to be we're going to be talking about making a like carving off Social Security and holding Bitcoin to back the Social Security account, because that's the way of politics, you know, like courting a big block of voters, and that's what the Democrats and Republicans are always doing. Like all of their policies melt and merge when it comes to Social Security. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing that we hear is Biden or whatever Democratic presumptive nominee starts talking about, well, I'm going to put Bitcoin behind Social Security, and then the next thing that we're going to hear after that is, and we're going to issue stable coins based on that, you know, like a Social Security account, and we'll eventually rediscover and back into this notion of actually putting different government agencies on blockchain. Um, but speaking of Kennedy, by the way, did you happen to see his video that he posted yesterday with the snake?
I did see that one, Lucas.
What'd you think of that, Rusty?
It was interesting. He was very good at, being able to capture the snake, and I saw your little comment on there about "Don't tread on me" and mentioning it. I think that's how I saw the video. But I think that it's just a really good way to show competence and just being able to do something normal.
Absolutely, show competence, show a steady hand. I thought it was pretty daring. Somebody told me that they thought it was the most Putinesque, the most Putinesque video or move by a United States politician that they'd ever seen.
Well, I mean, Kennedy is a very fit individual. I mean, you see him doing pull-ups, push-ups, whatever. I mean, when we talk about, is this individually physically capable of doing this job? I mean, like arguably, if you were to put these three in a cage match, there's only one possible outcome, and that's that Kennedy flounces both of them. I mean, Biden can barely walk down a ramp without falling down, and Trump is, a golfer. Obviously, he's able to get out and move around and do things, but these guys are not in the same camp in any way.
Well, and I thought it was just an amazing, a deft sort of social media new era. Again, Robert Kennedy is breaking a lot of rules. Trump broke rules, name calling, uh, uh, with his constant social media tweets, but Robert Kennedy is one upping him with videos like that. You know, it's not the polished narrative, voiceover video that he had earlier in his campaign.
Well,
And
I'd rather see this than him offering, hawking engagements, falconry and sailing.
oh, 100%, a hundred
Yeah, I
percent.
mean, you and I both had the same take on like the tone deafness of saying this is if you make a campaign contribution, you can come falconing with Robert Kennedy, like him grabbing a rattlesnake and putting it in a pillowcase. Much better optic to connect with the everyman, I think.
Absolutely, and on the 4th of July, should have seen. Yeah, maybe we'll see him launching a bottle rocket here.
Hey, real quick though, just before we get off the Bitcoin thing, I wanted to just like put this into perspective as far as like what nations hold however much, whatever. Right? We've made a lot of comments about El Salvador, a pittance of Bitcoin compared to what other countries have. Right? This is 1/10 of what Germany's got, and Germany dumping this bag, 50,000 Bitcoin. This is not that much Bitcoin, honestly, in the long run. Like when Germany divests themselves of Bitcoin, and we have the U.S. and China, like holding hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, and then you look at like how much do the big companies, as far as like whoever holds Bitcoin, like what have they got? This is the one that's the bigger story, right? Mount Gox, they're not selling Bitcoin; they are returning Bitcoin to the proper owners of who they were incorrectly holding their BTC. So when we talk about Mt. Gox, which also was in the title here, is that these Bitcoin are starting to flow back into the hands of people who been forced to hodl for a really long time. Wouldn't be surprised to see some of those Bitcoin actually end up on the market, but I'd be surprised if a lot of them do. Like it's more likely, I think, that a lot of these Bitcoin make their way back into the hands of the people who are the rightful owners of them, and then those just stay put for a long period of time, because probably the people who are getting these back are breathing a sigh of relief that they now are whole coiners and many coiners.
Interesting. And it is, yeah. I was surprised to. I mean, my jaw dropped when you brought that up. I've never looked at the actual amount of Bitcoin that El Salvador is holding, and it's not that much.
It's not that much. It's honestly, it's small. El Salvador is a small country.
And they sold 80% of their gold holdings in 2015. I just looked up. I don't know if you want to pull up their gold holdings or standings, like per capita and the amount of gold that they hold, but also not a lot, which makes them precarious. So I also think goes back to this notion that the true strength of a nation's currency is what is the political fairness in the country, and how much are they stretching that currency to mass.
Yeah, look, there's El Salvador with 1.3 tons.
Yeah.
That's compared with the gargantuan amount that the U.S. has in tons, which is 8,000.
Yeah. So, but we should see. I mean, long story short, here we should see different policy choices made by the big bag holders in gold. I don't know that silver is going to play that much into it, but even the in the the scarcity of resources for solar panels, whether that be cobalt or batteries, lithium. There's people. Everyone is running for lithium. I don't know that we're going to see a continued turn towards electric vehicles and this drive for lithium. I think that we might see more iron battery stations.
Well, as far as batteries go, I think likely if we start to really roboticize, probably a lot of those batteries are going to end up in robots. Cars, sure, but also robots. I think if you've been watching some of the stuff that's been going on with Amazon, Amazon has started to deploy fleets of robots to man a lot of their facilities. So that each of those robots essentially needs some amount of lithium, because they gotta all soak up electricity and be able to operate during certain shifts and walk back to the recharge station. So I think a certain amount of lithium is going to be continuously heading into the robot fleets that will now be starting to populate our manufacturing facilities.
Well, I don't know, lithium. I don't know. Maybe we find something better, but there's also the instability of lithium batteries and the fires that they cause.
For sure, that I wouldn't be surprised to see that happening. We did see that in the South Korean lithium recycling factory. Those fires, once they happen, they kind of get out of control fast, because if you have one fire that starts and a robot starts on fire, it's going to catch on fire and it's going to catastrophically cascade to all the other robots. So that could we could start seeing some massive lithium fire cascades in these facilities where there's concentrations of lithium in these ways.
Have you heard much about iron batteries?
I mean, not recently. I haven't checked up on any recent developments. Is this something that's getting deployed en masse, or is it still theoretical? Because we keep hearing about different technologies, and so many of them don't see the light of day. It's like,
Well, do you know the story of the discovery of batteries, or the first batteries that were made?
I mean, just as a history of technology, I mean, sure, yes. I mean, lead batteries and different types of things that we've used to store energy over time. But I mean,
I forget who it was, but literally just was putting lead filings, or actually iron filings in jars, called them piles. That's why in Britain they still call them piles. Jars of vinegar, I think. I'd have to look in. But anyway, lead batteries, or I'm sorry, iron batteries. You know, in rethinking like what would be possible with the electrical grid, and how you could distribute or stop like the massive transmission loss in the electrical grid. One of the solutions proposed is to have like at towns and various locations, think of like a shipping container filled with iron and with an acid, and that can
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen a lot of ways that we've contemplated storing, electricity, pushing rail cars up hills, flywheels, iron batteries. But like, I think we're talking about something slightly different here. Like storing it at massive scale for power grid style storage, maybe. But like there's like the trend in manufacturing, which is the thing that I was keying into. I'm not sure there's an iron battery that would make sense to have in a small mobile robot that
no,
would
no,
that would be
you can't have,
appropriate for a manufacturing facility.
yeah, I can't have them portable. But we digress. One other thing, going back to politics, did you happen to see the cover of the latest Economist?
No,
Oh, go look it up. Shocking. I mean, maybe it's even just at theeconomist.com. Rusty, did you happen to see it?
I think it's paywalled.
Oh, well.
No, I did not check out that cover.
It is a walker with the seal of the President of the United States bolted to the front.
Did you see that Biden said a ho 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 for the 4th of July during one of his speeches?
I didn't listen to it. I saw it on the news today. I didn't. I did not listen to it though, so I don't know. Ho ho ho! I guess it's Christmas in July.
I think I found it, Lucas. That's probably the one you're referring
Well,
to.
I thought it might get into some crazy tangent story of the real date of when Jesus was birthed and what Christmas means, and Christmas was moved to that date, and just I think it could have gone to a weird tangent on his thinking of why he put it there, but I think it's just also funny that he made the mistake.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is the cover of The Economist, and I thought that was pretty daring from such a cheeky magazine. So it seems like there's more. There's also a lot of talk from the Republicans about the 25th Amendment right now. I told you what I thought of the 25th Amendment the other day. But at the very least, I think Biden's chances of reelection are diminishing.
Yeah. Hey, look, we didn't get a chance to talk about Chia yesterday. I think we're overdue to chat about this a bit. So I know that there's been quite a bit of discussion in the various places where Chia gets talked about a lot, Discord and what have you. Just looking at the price. So we have now officially beat the last all-time low, which was roughly in October of 2023. We've now surpassed that. We're below that price. I believe I saw somebody said that we hit an intraday low of 17 something dollars. So yeah, pretty much just like straight price erosion over almost all of the halvening period here, right? We had a big run up prior to the halvening, and then after the halvening, we've seen nothing but like price erosion. So even though the network is producing far fewer coins, we're seeing nothing but an erosion of the price in Chia. So we're talking about like what's the long-term trend here. Whether we start to see capitulation from farmers, it certainly isn't showing up yet. So this is the dashboard that is published by Chia itself. So we started off like a high at something like 34 exabytes, and pretty much has seen a pretty downward trend here to where we have lost 10 terabytes off or 10 exabytes off the network in a matter of, what is this, 3 months? That's not an insubstantial drop, like that's pretty big in my book. And if we continue to see prices as low as they are, I would not be shocked at all for us to go far below 20 exabytes in space, and that trend does not look to be reversing in any way.
Well, this is why I think it's going to be important for blockchains to move from the narrative of making money off the base layer token to like being part of an ecosystem. I think that Chia needs to be promoting the uncompressed plots and the low economic cost of supporting the network, and thinking about and also why I wish that there was some way for them to be able to shrink the database, or at the very least, like, be putting out more copies of the database to be downloaded via torrent, instead of having to wait 4 days of updating.
Well, your minor technical gripes about the database size and the frequency with which they put it out doesn't change the basic economic situation, which is you're paid in XCH, and that has a certain value to it, especially if you have to pay your electrical prices in whatever your local currency is. That means that a certain percentage of whatever you make, right, needs to go back towards infrastructure costs. Like you have a carry cost, and if that carry cost is low enough, then you start to see capitulation. That is definitely happening in Bitcoin. There's been a trend that's happened recently where a lot of institutional Bitcoin players, with us having crossed the Bitcoin halving, they can't keep their operation in place because they're receiving less rewards from the network. This is certainly happening in Chia now that the price is essentially $20 here. It's hard to keep an industrial scale operation online. So if this means that only the small players can remain in the game, then this might lead to a substantial rise in the Nakamoto coefficient of the chain, because only small players can exist. But then that also means that if that switch to the uncompressed plots doesn't happen, there could be a range where now there's an attack possible with high GPU usage for a short period of time and attacking the network. I don't know exactly where that is at, but this is a worrying trend if it continues to go this direction.
I mean, I hear you, but I just wish that that part of I wish that it was courting more and more small users, instead of big petabyte farms. So
When you say courting, I mean, like, CNI doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. They don't really even weigh in on it. So this is all just like peer to peer. It's just a matter of whether somebody wants to bring something online or not. I'm not sure where you're going with that one. Like, nobody courts Chia to say, hey, you should set up an industrial scale anything. Like, who's doing that?
oh, I think they do.
Chia
m-
network?
um
No. I mean, I'm just going to say straight no to that one. Like, you cannot find a post where Chia says you should be farming at an industrial scale and buy as much as you can. I mean,
well, I think more so because they have the pre-farm, they have the ability to incentivize different projects, and it hasn't been targeted to try to put a Chia drive on every computer.
I mean,
There's also
there certainly were initiatives that individuals within Chia were pushing for that kind of a thing. I know that at Evergreen we were being asked to help with an initiative called one-click farming, which was a way that you could use certain pieces of Chia technology to enable the usage of storage that would be unused on, like, say, a network attached storage device or, data center storage, which really is the storage that could easily be courted. It's a lot harder to court cloud storage, like I don't think AWS, Google, or, Facebook or anything like that, farming at some scale would help Chia. So they've never really tried to do that. But, I think that there was some initiative to enable one-click farming to try to tap some of that unused storage and keep the network utilization high, because essentially net space is the resiliency of the network. The higher the net space, the harder it is to subvert the Chia network. So if you see this trend continuously going down, there will come a day where there is a attack that could occur on the network that could, catastrophically destabilize it, Luna style. But I don't know exactly where that's at. But there was an initiative. But other than that one, I've never heard of any initiative that has been forth by Chia to encourage more farming. I think it's been exactly the opposite. They've sort of just been standing to the side and not doing anything other than, courting some of these technologies that enable for the more exotic GPU style farming and the compressed plots.
Well, and courting GPU style farming and compressed plots is not beneficial to every computer, or a lower common denominator. So
No, that definitely favors more centralized, more big style farms, because certainly small guys running a GPU is expensive, especially if you're getting something like 12 to 14 cent kilowatt hour electrical costs. That's a high carry cost.
and I think part of the reason, I mean, is the massive dip here in well, that's Netspace, not the XCH price, but
Oh, you're talking about that big down spike. That happened because of the plot filter coming online.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. The but they've done more courting of well, when they released the farm too, they put that out for market making and opening up at XCH convertibility. And again, I think if they had been using that um I don't, even for marketing or God knows what, but it seems that they've been like concerned about holding the price at 35 or $30 per XCH, and I don't know. I don't know what other changes could have been made, but I do think that Chia has that there is a world out there in which there are millions and millions of very small farms, gardens. Um, Chia could become a garden chain, I guess, but who knows if that happens. Chia Foes, you said you didn't see Chia Foes, by the way. Um,
No, tell us about ChiaFos. What you're keeping up on it? You're a big purchaser.
I mean, I'm not a big purchaser of any NFT, Grant. I think NFTs are better as receipts or other use cases, and I'm not really big into PFPs. No offense, Rusty. I think the Azuki Ape is one of my only other PFPs, but I do think Chia Friends are a sign of something, community wise and significant in XCH, and I thought the Chia Foes were um, a a a good derivative of the Chia Friends collection. So I don't know who is behind Chia Foes. I do know that they airdropped some Chia Foes to the Chia Friends holders and sent some of the proceeds of the mint to Seth, creator of Chia Friends. So it's as we can infer from that it's not Seth doing a derivative collection, but some fan art. So I thought they were great. One eyes instead of two eyes, and otherwise similar collection. So I don't know why they popped up on my timeline, but I did take notice of them, and I thought they were as endearing as the Chia Friends. So I don't know anything more about them. I'll tell you that.
This is one other post that I saw, which seemed pretty interesting, indicating that OKX has a large amount of short interest on Chia. Now, how they're getting their hands on all of this borrowed Chia, I'd be very curious to know exactly what the dynamics of this are. But according to this account, there's a lot of open interest on XCH being sold essentially short. So maybe this will have to be turned around as this position has to be bought back.
I did not know that you could short Chia.
You can short anything as long as you have a market that is willing to set up a trade like that. But obviously, since Chia is a blockchain token, it can't be naked shorted. Like somebody's got to come up with the coin, unless it all happens within a centralized place where IOUs are essentially be moved around, and so like if Chia is being sold like this and then it's being withdrawn from OKX, the signal you should look for is if OKX uh, disables withdraw. If that happens, then something's up.
Hmm.
But as long as you can withdraw from OKX, then ostensibly they actually had the tokens, and then whoever they've allowed to borrow money like this, because it's arguably trading against some fiat currency here, that they're going to have to go collect from those guys. So whatever other collateral they're putting up to open these short positions, I'd imagine it's probably Bitcoin.
Apart from CNI and the pre-farm, do you know anything about the standings of Chia whales?
You mean like massive holders of Chia that might be moving coins around?
Yep.
I haven't been watching for any massive movements of coins. It's not something I don't sit and do a lot of technical chain analysis on Chia with any regularity at this point. Was something that I spent a lot of time doing in previous months, and last year certainly a lot, but I haven't had a chance to take a look at it with any scrutiny recently.
Hmm. Um, hmm. Well, I wonder who's I wonder who's loaning out all of that XCH for the shorts. Um, um, well,
I
I
mean,
don't.
this was something that we talked about, remember? Like when we were talking about market making and like whether you would go long or short Chia, and like what's the strategy here? Selling at a high price and buying back low, that's a good strategy. It's the best strategy in most cryptos is to just whatever price you get the coin, sell it immediately, because most crypto in the long term trend goes down rather than ever going back up. So there's very few L1s that actually experience price appreciation over time. So it's usually a good strategy in most cryptos, just the day you get the coin, just to immediately sell it.
Right. Well, it's also been the nature of the ecosystem to like have a lot of price speculation on the base tokens rather than those base tokens reflect the use of the chain. Um, and
Which,
the
which is which is different on Chia. I mean, Chia is definitely a coin which, if you look at the price action, this is uncommon of most crypto, right? Is that where you can see it go from like a really really low price to like almost triple in value? Like that's very uncommon to see this kind of action happen. But if this is the result of a lot of shorting that's been going on, then I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it bounce off this price and just rip hard. But like certainly this hurts the long-term viability of keeping farms online. But like, and sometimes when that capitulation happens, people sell off their drives, put them to other use and whatever, and then that net space won't come back. So we could see that continuously happen. And if the price action tends toward this, I'd be surprised if we see a lot of new space come online. Like that requires people actively wanting to get into this situation, bring new drives online, bring new hard drive space online. That only really makes sense with high capacity drives. So I'd be interested to know how hard drive sales are going here, but it's not something that I routinely engage in these days.
We've talked a lot about the I don't know, the consensus security and distribution of Chia, but there still also remains the fact that CBDCs are something that countries are that especially the political institution of countries see the benefit of using and are making moves towards using. I don't see that ever changing, no matter what the political the the bad name that CBDC has in crypto. I don't know that. I think like more common voters, as they understand fiat currency, as they understand inflation, as they understand like the power of turning money off, of turning your car off. We talk about liberty and sovereignty here, but a lot of people see that as a powerful political intervention, and I think that I still haven't seen something that is more suited to it than Chia's programmable smart coin set model. So I wonder if we see any countries come out of the closet sooner than later with their CBDC programs. Are you throwing up? Which in part that's going to be because they want to get.
Well, it just reminded me of this, that the anti-CBDC bill passed the House.
But what's in a name? I mean, like anti-CBDC bill, it really wasn't in the Fed bill. And if
what do you mean Fed bill? Is there a different like thing that passed recently in the House or the Senate that were?
Well, no, I mean, when that U.S. anti-CBDC bill came out, I just took it as it was a chance to in the Fed. I mean, notice that it says the text of the bill was that the Federal Reserve cannot create a CBDC. Well, I think the U.S. Treasury is going to be the one that's more interested in a CBDC and getting away from this notion of requiring a holding bank for the notion of laundering the debt that they've
Well,
created.
I guess that directly gets to the conversation we had the other day about like the lawfulness or unlawfulness of what the Treasury and the U.S. can do with respect to creating currencies and that kind of stuff. I guess we've got a long history and precedent for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
a great discussion.
Well, and I think that it really gets to what the newer understanding of money is an old understanding of money, back to stamping and stomping. Postage stamps and the Stamp Act and the stamp on boxes of tea, 2%, et cetera, et cetera. Taxes are the actual genesis of money in a political organization, and you can have taxes apply and be redistributed amongst various groups, and politicians want an accounting system that people trust so that they can flex that muscle, and having some sort of I don't know, financial instrument or species like to maintain convertibility between those is important. But if we give technological innovation to this notion of currencies bound to taxes, then it will allow governments to operate more efficiently, and they understand that. It's been hard for politicians to make that case to the constituency so far.
Hmm. So then the idea that you could pay your taxes in Bitcoin without incurring a capital gain penalty, that seems like that's gaining some traction as well.
I mean, it is, but again, that's not actually putting government on blockchain. You know, there's
I didn't. I'm not trying to.
well, and
That
I'm
it
just saying,
certainly is not. But like, if the idea, it relates to what we're talking about, right? Like, I'm not trying to take a hard right into a different discussion here, right? This all kind of revolves around the same basic discussion that we're having today about like what are governments doing, right? So we're
true.
saying Germany is dumping, right? Uh, Definitely the U.S. government has been selling some Bitcoin. Trump wants to reverse that. He says should be a strategic asset. There are other individuals in our government, Congress and Senate, that have said Bitcoin should be a currency. That means that no capital gains tax should be applied to it. That you should be able to use it freely as a currency, and you shouldn't have to pay a penalty for moving it around. There has also been various moves to say that you should be able to pay your taxes in Bitcoin. If you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin, if you can move it around without a penalty, then this idea that Bitcoin would be something that the US would hold and would use to back the US dollar starts to look like something that actually might occur along with their substantial gold holdings. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see that be the way that the direction of the country goes, because as we mentioned in our show the other day, that the politicians need to find new blocks of voters to court, and too many U.S. persons hold crypto. So ignoring that as a block and sort of treating Bitcoin and crypto as a pariah rather than embracing it doesn't seem to be a winning political trend. And I think that that's why you're seeing this being a significant reversal for a lot of politicians, because they need to find new blocks of voters. They need to find new sources of campaign revenues, and so I think that's why you're seeing some of this stuff, because we're seeing you know crypto being embraced. Now, this doesn't say that we're getting that kind of transparency that Kennedy is talking about. He's talking about doing something very, very different, which is saying, I want to end the corruption in government by making it so that it's a lot harder to hide where that money is going. If we're giving somebody money that the government is asking to do something or is buying some service from them, that ought to all be trackable and traceable on an open and transparent public ledger. But the idea that you could have a strategic reserve asset and use it to somehow back the dollar seems to be something that quite a few politicians are starting to come substantively around to as an idea.
And I don't.
Also, along that line of the viewpoint of the stable currency, it would give precedence and reason onto the mining that we were talking about in the past shows into the future. If the mining's going to start to slow down for BTC, it would be really reasonable for a country to start really starting to centralize that mining and continue to want to make that mining happen if it is seen as a stable currency and something as an asset that that country holds.
Maybe, but the depends on the cost of electricity, how much extra electricity that they have, and I only point out I mean,
Well, the
absolutely.
U.S. is sitting on the the mother load of free electricity because of all the fracking we've been doing. We produce a tremendous amount of waste methane that's really hard to do anything with. So throwing Bitcoin miners into a shipping container and putting them right close to there is an easy way to burn off that methane rather than venting it, and that's been shown to substantially reduce emissions. As we continue to see some politicians and governments be really concerned about the Paris Accord. So that's something that the U.S. again just probably sits on the top of the top of having the cheapest and freest electricity that can't easily be captured and used and put onto the grid.
Well, and I do think that also, like going back to the start of Bitcoin, the reliance on electricity in the wake of Enron and Enron like energy futures was also brilliant and causes us to pay attention to the price of electricity. And Grant, I don't mean to I don't mean to whatever. I point out like this. I think there's a couple of things in the notion of being able to pay our taxes in Bitcoin and also not to pay capital gains. The reduction of capital or the removal of capital gains on Bitcoin is interesting. I think it speaks to the government's inability to patrol that, but to being able to pay our taxes in Bitcoin, it was a fear in the early years that would not happen. Colorado, I think, opened up like paying taxes in Bitcoin in 2014, maybe 2015. But I think that having the ability to easily exchange Bitcoin has also been I don't know has lessened that fear, and I think that we just need to keep our eyes on the gold standard, or the goalpost of getting governments recorded on blockchain, getting their actual financial spending recorded on blockchain, and maybe also going back to conversations about the Taylor rule. Like what is, if we're going to have an inflationary currency at the government level and the government's currency, what is that ideal inflationary rate so that everybody can prepare and expect it? And the Taylor rule was just the notion that 2%. Everybody talks about 2% interest rate, and that was the notion that Congress would pass a law that the monetary base could only be inflated by 2%, and they had to budget accordingly to that expectation. So anyway, it's Friday. Anything else on our minds before we go into the Christmas weekend? Ho ho ho!
Christmas weekend.
Well, I heard it on the news. Yeah, go ahead. Didn't you see, or Rusty mentioned earlier that Biden led with ho 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 at a 4th of July celebration?
I totally missed that. That's hilarious.
Yes, and I think Kamala Harris accidentally introduced him as the vice president. So, my favorite phrase in all of politics has lately become the Kamala Harris unburdened by what has been. I use it all the time now. I'm just like, well, it's unburdened by what has been. So that's gold. That is political gold right there. Such a phrase.
The only other thing that's kind of caught my eye, and I'm not finding it. I know I saw this. Did you see that there was like a little commercial that was produced about the power company in Kenya that said, "Hey, we set up this hydroelectric plant, and we couldn't have done it if we didn't have a certain amount of commitment to the electrical usage that was going to be produced by the hydro plant." Did you see that one?
No, I didn't. And so, did they make a deal with a Bitcoin mine?
Yeah, essentially it worked like this. There was a waterway in Kenya, I think it was, that looked very promising to generate power from, and electrifying the area was a really positive step for the community. But for it to be viable, to be put in, they needed, I don't know, something like 70% commitment to the electrical power, and this is not a place that could have that sort of a commitment. So some Bitcoin guys said, well, if we can get that electricity at a certain price, we'll soak up the rest of it, and so we can commit to everything that hasn't been committed to for real productive use. God, I wish I could find this video because it was really great. But I will find it for the show next week. But essentially, they said, we'll take everything that wasn't committed to from the town, and that made it so that they could actually build the power plant. So that's like another one of these things where again, it's free energy, right? Like it's just water. Water is flowing. We're not talking about coal. We're not talking about anything else, but water flowing through a certain area. And then it also allowed them to sell electricity into the local community, and that allowed them to, increase their standard of living, because now they have electricity and they can do a bunch of stuff that they couldn't have done heretofore. So it's just another one of those things where there's like these ideas that, the only way that we can make this Bitcoin network work is to light the planet on fire. I think that narrative is being challenged substantively. So there's certainly interesting things that are happening, and I'll try to track that down so we can check out that clip. It was a pretty cool little commercial of like something that's going on in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and apparently this power plant company said that they're going to do this a lot.
Very interesting.
And a good teaser for next week. We'll talk about that some more.
Yeah, teaser for next week, and maybe next week we can find some time also to talk about the World Bank and special voting rights, because we talked about nations' gold holdings today, and we talked a little bit about earlier this week the financial history of the national banking system in the United States and its creation in 1862. I'm sure I've mentioned special voting rights before. Are they on your radar from the World Bank?
I mean, no, not particularly. I don't follow that as a political institution as much as I do, stuff in the U.S. and other things that relate to climate change, just because that's stuff that I've had some opportunities to work on professionally. So these things are more foremost in my mind than special voting rights and World Bank. So probably much more versed on that, and I'll be learning a lot as you educate us on it.
Well, and I think it'll be an interesting conversation that has a lot of bearing on both I don't know, international exchange rates and like sovereign currencies, because it is the current sort of I don't know, the top of the tree or the top exchange, and they've been trying to get away from just the notion of who holds the most gold, and so they sort of came up with a staking scheme, and it goes back to the United States. The World Bank and the IMF are totally modeled after the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve, and are the institutions that we used as if the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve are where the tax-paying citizens of the United States create dollars. The World Bank and the IMF were how were the channels through which we sent them out through the rest of the world. And so in a world that still is running on the dollar and the notion of first, second, third world, that all has to do with country standings with regards to the World Bank, IMF. I'll try to, maybe we'll throw that onto into discussions, because understanding what's going on there, I think, will give us an insight even to the Climate Action Data Trust. I mean, that's part of the World Bank program, and how they want to see the price of electricity in various countries figured out.
Yeah, and I found it. So there's the video that I was talking about, which is these guys talking about building this power plant in Kenya. And I where I found it, I already shared it with you. So I'll have to scroll up a little bit and look. I think I actually might have retweeted this one and reposted it as well, because I thought it was just fascinating. A little story about what Bitcoin is enabling in some parts of the world. So we'll maybe talk about this in more depth next week, and let's talk about special voting rights one of the days. But yeah, we're out of time, and we'll catch up with you guys next week.
All right, y'all have a great weekend.